Today's episode of the 52 Qs podcast is going to be a little bit different. We're needing to preempt our normally scheduled programming because some recent events have come to light and have brought AI screaming to the forefront. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably sick of hearing about AI. I know I'm sick of talking about AI. I am sick of hand-wringing about AI, and I'm not all doom and gloom about AI. I like AI. I like GPT. I like Suno. I think it's really, really cool. And we just did an episode on AI, but we have to talk about it again, because during a recent live stream, I was using Suno to generate some custom reference tracks. I think it's super helpful, and I had extracted the drum part from one of those references, and after the live stream, I was hit with not one, not two, but 4 copyright notices for the same section of the AI-generated drum loop. Yeah, we've got some things to talk about. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast. It is so good to be back with you today, and just thank you. I know you have a ton of choices out there, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the audio on the go. I just want to thank you for spending part of your day here with me, and also a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and neighbor subscribers of 52 Qs who keep all of this going. If you want to learn more about 52 Qs and how you can support us here, then stick around because I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later. So like I said in the intro, this episode is going to be a little bit different in that it's going to be, I guess, a little ranty, a little cautionary tale, and sounding some alarm bells regarding AI. Yes, we have to talk about AI. So during a recent live stream, I was working on a cue which is called Thick as Thebes, and we're going to listen to this here in just a moment. And I was using Suno AI to generate custom reference tracks. And this is something that I've started doing that I think works really well. You can say, make me a Middle Eastern boom bap track, and it will spit out some ideas, and you can think, oh man, that's really cool. I think I want to run with this, or that melodic turn is really interesting, or that drum pattern is really, really cool. And so I've been really enjoying this, and it's been a real boon to my my writing process. Instead of going into a library like Atomica Music, I love those guys over there, or going over to Scorekeepers, which I use for references all the time, I will get a flavor of an idea using AI. And then I can bring that AI-generated track, and this is what I did during the live stream. I can bring that track into Logic, and then using Logic 11's brand new stem splitter, I can split out into drums, bass, and other instruments and get a really kind of detailed, almost forensic look at all the different parts that are going on in this cue. It's been really, really helpful. I've enjoyed it as I am working to wrap up an album of world-flavored hip-hop tracks. This has been a real boon to my process, and I think is a way to use AI for good and not for evil. Now, if we look under the surface of some of the terms of service with Suno, and I'm assuming these other AIs, if you don't have a commercial subscription, like if you're just using the free Suno, then you are not allowed to create derivative works from those cues. So you can't, according to the terms of service, you can't take just the melody and write your own thing. You can't recreate what Suno creates according to their terms of service. Now, if you are a paid subscriber, then I think you can, because it allows for commercial application, and it gets arguably a little murky, and I can't begin to think how in the world they could possibly hope to police this, but that is not my problem. And that's not really how I've been using Suno. Now, if you're not familiar with it, Suno.com is a program that will take text prompts to generate. You can type in your text prompt and generate music with lyrics and instrumental tracks. And they're not nearly as crummy, as crappy as you hoped they would be, or at least as I hoped they would be. They're actually really, really solid. I think Spotify is about to have a massive problem on its hands, and I think that the Pond 5s and the Audio Jungles are about to get completely obliterated with AI-generated tracks. And I'm already starting to see this in Spotify playlist. I think even I can't remember what I talked about on the last AI episode, but I saw DistroKid published a playlist. It's like, hey, these are these hot new tracks that you can vote on, and they're right at the top. I don't know if it was number one, but it was definitely at the top. Was a clearly AI generated track, and any audio professional can tell there's just something not quite right. It's the audio equivalent of, like, if you look at an AI generated picture, like a hand has 6 fingers or something. It's just not quite right? The shadows aren't quite. So it's the audio equivalent of that. And audio professionals can tell a difference, but the general public probably can't. So I think the streaming services, DSPs, are about to get completely overrun with AI generated tracks. And this podcast isn't to argue whether or not what the implications for the music industry, the implications for the democratization of that's not what today's episode's about. But I do think they're about to have a problem. And I think what I ran into is indicative of that. So I was using Suno to generate a custom reference track that I entered in, that I then used to look at the different parts and then leveraged that into a cue called Thick as Thebes. So let's take a listen to Thick as Thebes, and then we'll continue the story. So that was Thick as Thebes. This is the cue that I wrote during a recent live stream, and this is the cue that I did a cue breakdown. So for you family and friends folks, you can see an in-depth breakdown of this cue. But I generated a custom reference track that I'll play, and I might get demonetized here or whatever, but this is the reference that I generated. so that was it. And it kind of does this over and over and over. You can see that I did a little bit of chopping up here because it doesn't really play nice with your typical kind of production music form. But there is some really interesting starts and stops that I think are really, really inspiring, right? Because we get into our little groove and we're like, okay, we're going to go this far, and then we're going to drop down into a stop down or an edit point, and then we're going to go do a breakdown. And so I have found that these reference tracks are really, really helpful to generate some different ideas. So I had extracted the bass part, I had extracted the other, which is all the other instruments, and I extracted the drum part. And I used the drum part as a way to kind of sweeten or almost like a sidechain compression kind of vibe to it. So here are all of my drum parts kind of by themselves. And I use the drum track with some, some effects and everything else. But I use the drum track as a way to kind of fatten it up and to sweeten it up. Of course, I had like frame drum. And so far, so good. So far, so good. But it was during the live stream where I was going in and I think I was flex timing everything so it all lined up and it was fine. But when I got done with the live stream, I guess within a couple of hours, I was hit with this. Now, for you folks listening, I was hit with, and notice this is all the exact same section, some 60-second section of this live stream. I was hit with 4 copyright flags, which basically said, hey, the Content ID recognizes this 60 seconds as belonging to not 1, but 4 different content holders. One is Pink Shark Music, Fine Tone Drums. One is Java Day, Big Boy Crunk Drum and Bass. So the drum and bass only stem. Sonic Culture, Sunset Lies, Drum and Bass. Music Mind Tracks, Toxic Boy Drums. And I was kind of reeling a little bit here. Because according to my understanding of the AI generated tracks, the tracks that get created are created from scratch. They are created based off of the algorithm, based off of what you key in, and it is generating it in real time. And in theory, there should be no two exactly alike in theory, but I mean, within reason. So a couple of things are going on here. The less nefarious scenario is that folks have already generated the same drum pattern, have already included it in their tracks, and have already run it through the Content ID system to where now it is creating duplicate flags. 4 flags for the same 60-second section. And this is a section where I was soloing the drum part itself, just the drum part. Which I didn't think you could do that. I didn't think like Content ID would see the same drum loop and attribute it to 4 different copyright holders. Maybe I'm not really sure how all of that gets worked out. It's somewhat nebulous, I think on purpose, but that's okay. So that's the least nefarious proposition, is that the same drum part has been generated before, and that AI isn't actually generating nearly as, I don't want to say, AI is not generating tracks which are nearly as new as we hoped and thought they were. That's the first scenario. And then they're all being content ID'd, which is going to create a cluster bleep, a cluster for libraries, for content holders, for the Spotify, Shazam world. It's about to be the Thunderdome up in here. It's a Mad Max, Furiosa, insanity, just free for all, whatever movie. I keep thinking of like Far and Away. You remember that old like Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise movie? Fantastic movie, music by John Williams. But it's just like take your stake and run as fast as you can and put your stake in the land, and that's yours, and you get to claim it. And whoever gets there first gets to own it. But clearly, 4 different people can jump in and copyright and squat on the same piece of land. It's about to be a giant mess. We thought that Splice was causing ripples in the library music world to where Splice is now showing up as you can't use Splice loops. Okay, we can't use Splice loops. Well, now we have tools where we can generate using generative AI to generate our own parts, but clearly that's not working either. At least right now. So that's the least nefarious proposition. The more sinister proposition points to much more legal dark territory, some murky waters here. And that is that AI, like Suno or Udio or whoever, isn't really generating these snare and kick relationships. They're not really generating these from scratch, but instead are collaging copyrighted material together and then spitting it out at you as generative. But what it really is phrases, 4-bar chunks, 8-bar chunks of drum loops, which have been scraped and vacuumed from these libraries like Pond 5. Yes, Pond 5, who sold and licensed their catalog to the LLMs, the language learning models. And they did this a couple of years ago now. They saw the writing on the wall. They knew that I'm getting all frothy and ranty. They knew that the AI companies were coming to eat their lunch. Instead of taking care of their composers, they sold out their composers, licensed their libraries. They threw some crumbs to the composers. Here's a couple $100 to have your music licensed. We're going to go ahead and deposit it in your bank account. And if you don't want it, then give us the money back and we'll exclude your music from the catalog. And now the AI companies have all of that data. And instead of using it to train the AI, what they're really doing is just creating little copyrighted snippets, which then the AI company is going to stitch together and pass it off as generative. And that, friends, is wrong. And I secretly think that's what I think has happened here. I don't think these 4 people, these 4 artists or whatever, I don't think they used generative AI and now they ran them through the Content ID system and now they're causing flags. No. I think they used splice loops or whatever, some loops from another service, and now the AI that I used cobbled together and pulled something copyrighted and chunked it into my track, and now I'm getting a flag for it. And that, the implications of that are staggering. And this is about to be an absolute legal minefield. I have an interview coming up with Aaron Collins, VP of Film and TV Music for CSAC. And I asked her about AI because it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that we cannot stop talking about. Because we have to, because things like this are going to happen more and more. She said something which actually, some spoilers for her interview, and it's coming up in a couple of weeks. But she said something which really gave me comfort, and that was that no production, basically worth their salt, is going to take a risk on putting uncopyrightable music on their air, because it's a legal minefield. Discovery Channel or NFL or CBS, Netflix or whatever, they're not going to take something that's just an AI-generated track and stick it on their air. It's not copyrightable. It creates all kinds of legal headaches and who gets assigned and everything else like that. But if we are being encouraged from the AI companies, if we're being encouraged even from some other content producers to lean into AI, we have to be mega careful lest we write something that will create copyright flags. And see, the thing is, I don't think it's just about loops. I've been using loops for years. I'm a big believer in Splice. I do feel that they were unfairly maligned, and so I think they're the boogeyman for all things wrong with using loops. Using loops and using samples is intrinsic to many styles of music, especially hip-hop. If you write like boom bap hip-hop, you have to use samples because that's just baked into the way it sounds, to the way the style sounds. And I've talked about Splice before. I think they're unfairly maligned, but even that notwithstanding, I've used Splice loops. I have auditioned Splice samples and Splice loops in my live streams, and I've done literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of live streams, and I have never once, not once, ever, in my hundreds of hours of live streams, now going on 3 years worth of live streams every single week, I've not once gotten a copyright flag from a Splice loop. And so the first time during a live stream that I'm using an AI-generated loop, I get 4 copyright flags. Do you feel the train coming at us? See, I'm not worried from an artistic perspective about AI. I'm really not. I'm not worried that they're going to come and take our jobs. I'm not worried that CBS is going to start using AI-generated tracks. I'm not worried that trailer houses are going to start using Suno instead of using composers, because I think we can tell a difference. Just like we can tell a difference between AI-generated imagery, I think the human touch creates a fingerprint that other humans can absolutely dial into. So I'm like I said at the top, I'm not doom and gloom about AI. But we have to be super careful. And I have to be super careful. And getting 4 copyright flags for one AI-generated loop the first time gave me super pause and kind of took my breath away a little bit, to the point where we are interrupting our podcast. You know, I like to keep it super positive here, not because like I'm always happy. No, it's because I believe that if you believe in the positivity in the universe, then positivity will reflect upon you, right? I truly believe that. But there comes a time where we have to call attention to what's going on. Either way, libraries are about to have a massive problem. So if you are in the production music industry, expect libraries to start cracking down on this hard. And they should. They should, because of this right here. This. Now, it should be noted that it was only the exposed loop which tripped up the content ID. The track itself doesn't. And and Thick as Thebes won't trip up. But as soon as I isolated that loop, that's what caused the problem. And so, again, if you're in the production music industry and you thought libraries were intense about using splice loops, you thought they were, super like hardcore about we can't use melodic loops, and I think it's about to get worse, and I think it needs to until all of this gets cleaned up. And I think we need to talk about it. And just yesterday, I was in one of the PMA virtual networking events, and there was a call for panel suggestions. And I think we need a panel on AI for sure, because we can't ignore this. And how do we use these tools for good and not for evil? Let me say this a less flowery way. How do we use these tools that do right by our libraries, that do right by all of the copyright holders that maybe these AI tools are being drawn from? Or how do we use AI responsibly to where we can have AI do some of the work for us, the work that we don't necessarily need to be doing? Last week at Full Sail was our Hall of Fame. And if you don't know, I teach at Full Sail. I teach production music at Full Sail. I'm also department chair of industry and portfolio. Anyway, that's what I do at Full Sail. Last week was our Hall of Fame week. And Hall of Fame at Full Sail is really cool. It's like, imagine like the Oscars meets Comic-Con meets E3 meets the Grammys, all kind of mashed into one. It's like this whole week-long event where Full Sail honors high-achieving graduates who are inducted into their Hall of Fame. And we have different panels, and I was actually a YouTube moderator for one of the panels, and it was a panel on when games and film and animation and technology all come together. And of course, AI came up. And the founder and CEO of Lighting Mentor Inc., Jeremy Vickery, had this to say about AI.
I think that as technology gets better, what's more important for you as students, especially in the realm of AI coming in, it is not so much about the tools and the software. This school has traditionally taught button pressing. You're a camera operator. Do you know the Arri Alexa 35 this? Do you know how to run this console? This is getting less important, and technology is going so fast that the tools are not the important part. It's the foundational skills of, do you know how to write music that's compelling? Do you know how to tell a story that's compelling with editing, with camera, with action, with, this whole thing? All of these skills, the foundational skills of the arts, are actually the most important thing. And as the computer will start doing the button pushing, the autofocus, all of these things for you, if you are just the button pusher, you're going to lose your job. I think it's much more important to say, what story are we telling? I'm not afraid of AI taking over my job, because the level of subtlety that we deal with on a feature film or a high budget television project, AI can't even come close to the level of feedback and interaction that we need. It can generate images on the fly, really a pretty picture really quickly, but it can't receive the notes that I would give. It wouldn't have the interactivity of the collaborative process of defining, like, how do we design a character? How do we design a world? How do we design the lighting in a way that's meaningful, rather than spit me out a picture that looks somewhat believable really quickly. So I think the foundation of what you're learning, storytelling absolutely is the most important thing, and then finding a tool that will help you do that as quickly as possible.
And that's what I believe about AI. And that's how I think AI should be used responsibly. Use it as a tool to support your own creative self, your own creative efforts, what comes in your head, out of your muse, using AI to shortcut that process. Is that the shortcut the right word? To get quicker from point A to point B, not to go around point B to get to point C. I don't know if my lettering is making any sense. Because talent is still important. Being able to tell a story with our music is still important, and that's what is going to connect with an audience, and I'm not sure AI can do that. And even if it could, what about these copyright flags? So where does that leave us? What can we do? Well, the first thing we can do is not depend on AI to do the heavy lifting of creativity for us, with the understanding that it's just a tool. It's a tool which should support our creativity, not anchor our creativity. The next thing is I don't think we can get away with creating an AI track, and obviously we can't just use it. We can't just pass it off as our own. And I don't think we can recreate it, like note for note and call it okay. I don't think we can do that. I think, like I mentioned, it's a kind of against the terms of service with Suno, for example. And I don't think libraries need that. And so we should treat AI and using AI assets in our cues as if it were a stick of sweaty dynamite, which may or may not be better to have just left aside or left in the boat, for you Lost fans. We don't want an arst situation happening here, right? Okay, anyway, that's a really, really old reference. But yeah, dynamite gets less stable the older it gets. And once it starts sweating, it's basically sweating nitroglycerin. And so you can't bump it. You can't move it. Just dropping it could cause it to explode or cause you to explode. See arst. Maybe I'll put a clip in, but it's pretty violent, so I probably won't. Just look it up. You've got some arst on you, for you Lost fans. But if we thought that we had to be careful with using splice loops, we have to be even more careful with using AI assets. Am I going to keep using AI? Absolutely. I actually subscribed to a month of Suno just to see if it's better, because I know that if you subscribe to GPT, there's like different tiers and all of that. Plus, if you are a paid subscriber, it covers any commercial usage from a licensing legal standpoint. Copyright flags notwithstanding, I don't know if that's a whole other ball of issues. But I know that legally I am covered by using AI assets, but even still, I'm handling it in my cues like the nitroglycerin it is, and I sure as heck can't depend on it to to carry my cues. And I think in Thick as Thebes, I don't think it does that. It's there, and I treat it like a reverb send or parallel compression. But what I'm not going to do is rip off a melody, recreate it, and call it a day. I don't think we can do that. But what about you? What have been your experiences with AI? Have you gotten any copyright flags on your YouTube channels or SoundCloud or whatever? I honestly want to hear from you. This is about to be a really big problem. And I would love to know, Suno, I don't know if you're watching, probably not, or if you're a library that's watching this or whatever, I'd love if you can shed any light on why I would get 4 copyright flags for the same 60-second section of an AI-generated drum loop. I want to know. Because if it's 4 people copywriting the same AI-generated loop, that's one thing. But if it's Suno spitting out copyrighted music, then that is a whole other huge, huge, huge problem. So if you have answers, please let me know in the comments below. So we are going to take a super quick break, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can help support 52Qs. We'll be right back. Every week I talk about how this episode and the podcast and the community, the channel, would not be possible without the amazing support of our family, friends, and neighbors, subscribers of 52Qs, who do pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. And in addition to being thriving members of the community, as well as supporting me and Shannon and everything that we're doing here, they also receive extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video archives, weekly Q breakdowns, production music almanac, living ebook, and the opportunities to submit to real music libraries. Now, it's free to join 52Qs. You can just go to 52qs.com and sign up, be a member of the community. We would love to have you. It will always be free to join the community. But if you've been watching, or if maybe this is your first time, but if you're wondering, is there a way to kind of level up my production music skills in the industry, meeting like-minded, super friendly, very generous composers? Then why don't you think about subscribing? Memberships start at around $4 a month, and we would love to have you. Again, that's 52qs.com. So that is going to do it for us this week. And again, a huge word of thanks to those family, friends, and neighbor subscribers who pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. Thank you so very much. I gotta tell you, my rhythm of the episode's a little off, because this is normally when we would listen to the Q, but we listened to Thick as Thebes a little bit earlier just to give today's episode some context. But as a reminder for you family and friends subscribers, you can check out the complete Q breakdown of Thick as Thebes over in the Q breakdown section. But you definitely want to tune in next week. Next week, we are having a very special live episode that is June 6th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Eastern, where we are doing our live voting for the composer quest for this quarter. And that is, what is your superpower? We're going to be having live voting. And it's not too late. If you are a member of the 52Qs community, then jump into the Composer Quest. It is in the right-hand side or the left-hand side of the menu here, and you can join us. Let us know what your superpower is, and submissions, I think, are due by the 3rd. Which is Monday, June 3rd. I think it is. You can check that out. But that's going to do it for me this week. I hope that you've had a fantastic week 22, and I know that you're going to have a great week 23. How do I know that? Because I trust and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52Qs podcast is copyright 2024 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community or becoming a member subscriber of 52Qs, head over to 52qs.com.